Hi, I'm Harold Bell for the Legends of Inside Sports Detox Style. Today's show, I will introduce you to Earl Lloyd. His hometown of Alexandria, Virginia recently unveiled a statue honoring him. I'll be right back to tell you who was Earl Lloyd. All right, this is a press release I received from the city of Alexandria. They say they were unveiling Earl Francis Lloyd statue at a virtual ceremony. The city of Alexandria and the Alexandria African American Hall of Fame Committee will host a virtual ceremony to unveil a statue honoring Earl Francis Lloyd at Charles Houston Recreation Center on Saturday, April 3rd from 1 to 2 p.m. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the event will be closed to the public, but will be streamed live online. Lloyd was born in Alexandria, Virginia on April 3rd, 1928, the youngest of three sons to Theodore Benjamin Lloyd and Daisy Mitchell Lloyd. He was raised on Montgomery Street and graduated from Parker Gray High School in 1946. He received a scholarship to West Virginia State College, where he was a Black College All American player that led the team to two conference championships and obtained his bachelor's in physical education in 1950. That same year, Earl Lloyd was drafted by the Washington Capitals and made history on the night of October 31st, 1950, when he became the first African American to play in the National Basketball Association. After 7 games, the team folded, and Lloyd was drafted into the U.S. Army and served during the Korea War. After leaving the military, Lloyd returned to basketball in 1952, where he played in more than 560 games, 9 seasons before his retirement in 1960. In 1968, he made history again by becoming the NBA's first African American assistant coach for the Detroit Pistons and was named their head coach for the 1971-72 season. Earl was inducted into the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame in 1993, the Central Intercollegiate Athletic Association Hall of Fame in 1998, the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame in 2003, and the Michigan Sports Hall of Fame in 2012. He is also enshrined in the Alexandria African American Hall of Fame. The Earl Lloyd statue will be installed in the lobby of Charles Houston Recreation Center and will be available to public viewing beginning April 5th. Now, the thing is, how did Earl Lloyd get a statue in Alexandria, Virginia at the Charles Houston Recreation Center? Well, I just read you the press release of the how and why. But let me tell you what the inside story is, as they say. I'm inside sports, right? Well, there was Earl Lloyd had been overlooked for decades as far as being inducted into the Hall of Fame with his contributions as the first Black to play in the NBA Hall of Fame. He was the first Black because he beat Chuck Cooper and Sweetwater Clifton, who was drafted that same year. He beat them by 1 day, right? Because of the schedule. And for many years, man, guys, sportscasters and all these sports experts, they kept telling me that Earl Lloyd wasn't the first to play in the NBA. I said, man, you guys are crazy, man. What are you talking about? I'm talking about guys like Sonny Hill. I'm talking about Oscar Robertson, Bill Russell, who should have known that Earl Lloyd was the first to play in the NBA, because guess who played him? Who told me that Earl Lloyd was the first to play in the NBA? None other than the Godfather himself, Red Auerbach, right? So anyway, Earl was the first Black to play, beating these other two guys by 1 day. Earl went on to become the first Black to play on the NBA championship team, had a teammate by the name of Tucker, who was his teammate. So they were the first to play on the NBA championship team with the Syracuse Nationals, right? And Earl, of course, went on to become the first black assistant coach with the Detroit Pistons and went on to become the second black head coach after Bill Russell. He would have been the first head coach of sports franchise, but the Detroit Pistons administration and owners didn't want a black to be a head coach in Detroit at the time. So they named a player as a player coach, none other than Dave DeBusschere, right? So Earl went on to become a scout, and he scouted, and finally they brought him back as an assistant coach, and then as a head coach, where he didn't last but a year because two of his top players, Dave Bing and Bob Lanier, sabotaged his career and ran him out of the NBA after that 1 year. Well, anyway, Earl Lloyd would call me like in 1997, I think in 1998, and said, he was getting older, man, that he was being overlooked by the NBA. He thought he should be inducted into the NBA Hall of Fame. They was letting him come around and talk to the rookies and stuff about how to adjust to NBA life and all that, throwing him some breadcrumbs. Well, he didn't appreciate that. So he knew that I had headed a campaign to get Willie Wood of the Green Bay Packers into the NFL Hall of Fame after they had blackballed him. Willie was a DC boy. Earl, we consider Earl a DC boy because he grew up over in Alexandria, Virginia, just over, other side of the bridge there. So he called me and said, Harold, could you, help me get into the Hall of Fame? So I said, yeah, okay, I'll do that. But what I had in my pocket, I had guys like Red Auerbach. Like I said, he's a godfather, or was the godfather of the NBA. And then I had this brother, white boy at the Washington Times, Dick Heller. And I got with Dick Heller, and they said, Harold, yeah, we need to do that because Earl belongs in the Hall of Fame. Then I went to down on Capitol Hill and got Congressman John Lewis to be a part of that team. So I had John Lewis, Red Auerbach, and Dick Heller as a part of the team, the campaign to get Earl Lloyd inducted into the NBA Hall of Fame. Well, I started out by having, doing Black History Month's tribute to Earl, let people know who he was. And one year, I think it was 1998, I did a tribute to Earl Lloyd at Bolling Air Force Base in Washington, D.C. So I had all these, my guys, Roy Jefferson, James Brown, Sam Jones, George Knox, a bunch of celebrity athletes and media personalities came out to honor Earl. And it was standing room only. But there was this guy by the name of Dave McKenna. I didn't even know who this guy was, right? He wrote for the city paper. And in the city paper, after the event was over, this is what Dave McKenna had to say. See, there's always been these guys I call white media assassins when it comes to Harold Bell. See, they didn't like for people to stand on their own feet, and be able to say, hey, man, I'm going to write this, I'm going to do this, this is what I'm going to do. You understand? The white media did not like that. And Dave McKenna was one of those white assassins in media that I didn't know. I already knew about Tony Kornheiser of the Washington Post, Dave Feinstein of the Washington Post, Dave Kindred of the Washington Post, even my man George Sullivan, who was the editor. I had done a lot of things. I've been a freelance writer for the Washington Post. When the Washington Post first got their television sports talk show, I used to co-host it, and I wasn't even on the Washington Post staff. But George Solomon said, Harold, I want you to co-host the show this weekend. So that's how I was in with the Washington Post. But this guy, Dave McKenna, come out of nowhere, and this is what he said in a column that he wrote in the city paper. Excuse me. He said, last week, Harold Bell, the sports talk show host, sports writer, do-gooder, and all-around rabble-rouser, threw a party to honor Earl Lloyd, the NBA's first black player, in a crowded ballroom at Bolling Air Force Base. Folks who remembered Lloyd from his days across the river at Parker Gray High School in the mid-40s mingled with those who just wanted to be near the alarming, obscure athletic pioneer who broke the NBA color barrier as a member of the National Capitals in 1950. Lloyd, for whatever reason, never got his due around his hometown through the years, and sadly, he still isn't likely to after this function given by Harold Bell. He said local daily newspapers and television stations, along with major sports figures, all stayed away from the tribute. They all got press releases, said Bell. Why didn't they come? And this is what Dave McKinnon said. He reads my mind. He said, deep down, Bell knew the mainstream press and jocks didn't come because of him. Plenty of people, including some of the biggest names in town, wanted no parts of Harold Bell or anything that he was associated with. And he gave out names like Don King and Sugar Ray Leonard and John Thompson, these people who weren't there and they weren't coming. And the sad thing about that, man, is this is how white media works. You know, it's really white privilege. He never interviewed Sugar Ray Leonard. He never talked to John Thompson. He never talked to Don King. These folks that he said that I knew, but didn't want any parts of me. This is how they have been sabotaging us, man, for years, especially me. You know, I made my own way. You know, and to have a guy like Dave McKenna who make like I'm his friend, Harold Bell is my hero. Man, they are what you call what Judas. They stab you in the back and smile right in your face, man. So this is the kind of things that go on. And the surprising thing that when I did the tribute to Earl Lloyd doing NBA All-Star Weekend, see, I was doing this thing continuously to make sure the NBA knew who Earl Lloyd was. Well, it was 2001. The NBA played the game here in Washington, D.C. Now, one thing you have to understand about the NBA, anytime they go into a city, and have their NBA All-Star game there, they don't allow anybody else to do anything in that city like hold tributes and hold parties with the players at restaurants. They close all of that down. Well, they couldn't do that with Harold Bell because guess what? I had Red Auerbach, the godfather of the NBA, in my corner. So I decided that weekend the NBA they will be in town. So I did an Earl Lloyd tribute, Earl Lloyd Day, out in Alexandria, Virginia. The governor of Virginia, I think his name was McNally or something like that, who was the governor at the time, did a proclamation to Earl Lloyd and saying it was Earl Lloyd Day. So we did that on a Saturday, right, early. And then we came back into Washington, D.C., and I had a tribute at the Bohemian Caverns, a historic jazz and blues place down on U Street in All West. I had a tribute there, and Sonny Hill, Casey Jones, Earl Monroe, Al Adams, man. We had everybody there. Big House Gaines even came in town from Winston-Salem. And Lenny Moore was there. And the only thing that Red Auerbach participated in that NBA All-Star weekend was my tribute to Earl Lloyd at the Bohemian Caverns. He didn't participate in anything else, right? But all in all, it was a great weekend, and it went off. Had a couple of bumps here and there, but I got by. You know, like my guy who's supposed to be co-hosting it with me, who hired me with Nike, John Phillips. He beat me out of $34,000. It was $17,000 supposed to go to Kids in Trouble. He took and spent all the money on him and his family coming to D.C. from Portland, Oregon. And Sam Jones was supposed to have my back. He claimed he didn't know anything what was going on, but that was okay. We got through that. Okay, I got through that. And Earl Lloyd was finally inducted into the NBA Hall of Fame in 2003. I mean, even the Washington Post had to do a front page story on Earl Lloyd in that tribute that weekend in the style section. The Washington Times. So a guy like Dave McKenna, you know, I really, man, I really don't. I really think he was a good guy. He just had his priorities all mixed up, man. And He has written for the city paper. He's done freelance for the Washington Post. Tony Kornheiser ran him out of the Washington Post. And that's what he was. He was a wannabe writer for the Washington Post. He went on with the Undefeated, I don't know where he is now, in something called the Deflector. But it's guys like him and David Kendrick, man, and John Feinstein and Tony Kornheiser, you know, the backstabbers in media, man. And they are all around us. But see, I've been blessed because of social media. I've been able to keep my name out there despite. See, I don't worry about the black brothers. I know where they're coming from because most of them are insecure, you know, but they don't make no decisions in media newsrooms at deadline time. It's the white boys that make all the decisions. A media press room at deadline is one of the most segregated institutions in America, second to a church on Sunday. That's right, second to a church on Sunday, man. The media, they want to control everything. If they can't control you, they don't want anything to do with you. So I understand that, and you have to keep on moving, and that's what I've been able to do. So Earl Lloyd is in the Hall of Fame. And one thing I regret about Earl Lloyd is that this brother really, you know, and it is an ongoing story in the black community. We don't know how to say thank you. You know, we don't know how to say thank you. Earl Lloyd never said thank you to Red Auerbach, who's no longer with us, to Dick Heller, who's no longer with us, or to John Lewis, you know, and of course not to me. He didn't say thank you. But guess who presented him at the Hall of Fame ceremony? Dave Bing, the same guy that ran him out of Detroit as a coach. He called him to present him. You know, that would never happen on my watch because Dave Bing is really started out being a nice young man, like all the guys that come through me. But once they get $2, they think they are smarter than anybody else around them. And Dave Bing was that type of individual. So I just wanted to throw that little information out here because Black history is 365 days of the year to me. I don't celebrate Black history just on the month of February, the shortest month of the year that they give us. I celebrate Black History Month 365 days of the year, 12 months a year. So anyway, that's going to be it for the Legends of Inside Sports Detox. And remember, you can find me on blackmeninamerica.com, the original Inside Sports, Detox, YouTube, Facebook. So I get the word out. And let me tell you something. You know, truth needs no evidence. And if you're going to soar with eagles, you cannot hang out with chickens. I'm Harold Bell, and until next time, have a great day. I'm Harold Bell. My wife Hattie and I found a nonprofit organization in 1968, shortly after the riots that almost destroyed my hometown, Washington, D.C. The program caters to the needs of at-risk children as it relates to social services such as education, law enforcement, drug abuse, gang-related violence, and other antisocial behaviors.